my name is Pavan Davra. Welcome to Precious Brain Lab, where we talk on brain disorders, brain connectivity, and brain development. In today's episode, we're going to understand and unfold the reality of schizophrenic. What exactly happens inside the brain living in schizophrenics? Because reality is different. And that's what I'm here for. What we see or what we understand by several different sections is not complete information given out. In today's episode, you will understand the neurobiological level of how does schizophrenic affects the brain, along with some new understanding towards schizophrenics as well. And therefore, I request you to keep everything aside. Whatever you know about schizophrenic, I request you to keep it aside and look from a different perspective, from a different light on schizophrenics. As much as I'm keen about to talk on this, but the sad part of a schizophrenic is that it's very difficult to treat. And in the past of history, if you see, a lot of patients have suffered a lot while being treated with schizophrenics. What are the real factors of schizophrenics? We're going to understand and unfold in today's episode. But before I begin, I'd like to say something that if you really have any questions, you can please email us on preciousbrainlab@gmail.com. And if you have any questions, you can email us and we'll reply you back. So please see that if you have any questions, don't feel shy and talk. You can just email us and we'll see what we can, what is the best way we can reply to you on certain questions that you have about your disorders, your problems with your brain, or on those lines. So let us begin with the first section of schizophrenics. And I'm super excited to talk on this because I want to make you realize I've got all the information today, but this information will continue in the future as well. So if I give something now, then I'm still researching on more on this as well, like bipolar disorder, schizophrenics, autism as well. These three are the mainstream of, mental illness. So let us begin with the first section. And the first section is what exactly the first thing we need to understand what schizophrenic is. So if you understand what it is, then I'll let you know in depth about all of this in this video. So as you can see, schizophrenia has a complex mode of inheritance involving multiple genes, biological processes, and environmental factors. Now, if you see what schizophrenic is, schizophrenia is multiple genes involved in this. Now, multiple genes are because it's related to the genes. Let us first understand that. Then comes the biological processes, the process that takes place inside the brain. It's more towards serious problems like changing the wiring and a lot of other factors. I'm going to talk on this today. So biological process changes the wiring of the brain along with the genetic modification that happens inside the schizophrenic. And then comes the environmental factor. Factors like what? Let's say parents' pressure or abusive childhood, or let's say your partner is abusive, dysfunctional family. There are many factors, like single mom, but stressing out on not giving enough to their children, and even that can cause schizophrenic. But mostly is related to bipolar disorder, but some of them do have that problem as well. But this happens at the early age. Let's say if a single mom is very young and she's about in her 20s and she has a baby and then she's taking care of a baby, then that's also a problem that can lead to schizophrenic as well. So when we reach to this point of understanding that the environment also plays an important role, biological factors, and also multiple genes, if these are involved, then there is more to this as well, because we're going to talk in depth about this. As much as we know that there is the evidence of multiple genes that I talked about, that there is the evidence of significant genetic etiology involving multiple genes such as dysregulation binding protein 1, which is commonly known as DTNBP1, neurolegulin 1, NRG1. These components of the genes are very, very important. As these type of protein type genes, they can change the wiring of the brain. What you are not supposed to do, you will do that. And that's the craziest part of gene modification. Because once there is the shifting in the genes, then it's very difficult to treat a certain disease. If I talk on blood cancer, glioblastoma, GBM, they're very hard to treat because they're so aggressive that the patient dies. Very rare chances in GBM, patient survives. Out of 10, 1 survives and 9 dies. Out of 10. Imagine how strong these are with the genetic modification or related to the genes. So this is the most important thing that we need to understand right now at this moment, that genetic is involved with schizophrenic, which is DTNBP1 and NRG1, 2 genes that I'm talking. Then comes the part of what are the types of schizophrenics. Now, basically, you know all of this, but I'm starting with to understand right from the bottom, which is why I'm talking on these terms. I'm already begin with genetic. Now, genetic modification, I really wanted to talk on this before I jump with the next slide, that genetic modification happens when there is an environmental factor involved in it. It's not just about something that happens all of a sudden. No. I'll give an example. Let's say I saw a kid, a kid was talking in an interview. In an interview, he says that I was a brilliant student and I had a really good family. But because I took two courses in one time, which means one on this section and one on that section, 2 courses. So let's say in the morning he attends this course and in the evening he attends this course. Now because he was doing this back and forth, it was overburdening. And so the environment was causing a lot of pressure to this child. And eventually, he started to imagine things. And this child got into psychosis pretty soon. He started to imagine things that he can fly from the window. He opens the window, he can fly. And sooner he detects this and he gives this to his parents. The parents takes it and they give them medications, but they close the windows. They don't open it. And then later, after years of treatment, what an amazing thing happening is he turns out to be a computer scientist. How cool is this? Think about this. He started with psychosis and now he's turning into a computer scientist. This is what I call the real deal of fighting. And this is the example that the environmental factor had caused him to go into psychosis. But not only that, he had the willpower with his loving family. He fought back. The family was so positive that they were supporting this child on every step. They gave him that confidence. The friends were seriously involved in giving this person more and more encouragement. How beautiful this is. Imagine how family has treated this patient. This is why they can come out of this. And that's why I love when people challenge themselves and they finally come out of it. So let us get back to our slide. So as you can see, paranoid schizophrenia, epiphanic schizophrenia, catatonic schizophrenia, and undifferentiated schizophrenia, residual schizophrenia, simple schizophrenia, and unspecified schizophrenia. And there is one more which we call it schizo affect. There's one more that I didn't add, it's schizo affect. It's a combination of bipolar disorder as well. That's what they say, but I'm not pretty sure on those terms, but I still take it as schizophrenia. And then what are the signs of it? If you see delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, reduced speech, lack of motivation, and flattened affect. These are the types and the signs of schizophrenia that I talked on. I'm not going to get in depth of those different types. I'm going to teach you something, that what is happening inside. Enough of talking the different types of schizophrenia. Different types. No. This and that, in this happens this, in this happens this. They have the list in DSM-5. I'm sorry to say, I don't follow. So I don't want to get to that part. This is neuroscience. And we talk in depth. So these types that we're talking on schizophrenia, what is the most common thing that happens inside the brain? So studies have shown that subcortical dopamine dysfunction is the key mechanism. Finish. All of them. I solved it. I solved that one part. Any sort of schizophrenia, any type, there's this one mechanism that's destroyed the brain, and that's the dysfunction of dopamine. Finish. Gone. There is nothing beyond this. This is the reality I'm talking today. No matter what type you have, or no matter what type of, you may have symptoms, it doesn't matter. What matters is you have a dysfunction in dopamine, and dopamine is a reward circuitry and motivation. So please try to understand what is happening to your brain. Now from here, you're going to change the perspective of what I'm talking about from here on. Listen to all of this and you will start to understand what schizophrenia is. So as you can see, in patients with schizophrenia, alterations in dopamine function within the striatum cause delusion and psychosis. So if you see the part of dopamine, there is these two types that are given. If you see that one says reduced dopamine release in the ventral striatum, associated with negative emotional and addiction severity, and reduced dopamine synthesis capacity in the dorsal striatum associated with amotivation. And if you see down there in that picture, I'm talking about thalamus. caudate nucleus, putamen amygdala, nucleus accumbens, globus pallidus, and tail of caudate and head of caudate. We are looking at a circuitry. Please try to understand. This is not normal. This is absolutely not normal. The circuitry is seriously involved in making it difficult for you. Now, there's positive symptoms and negative symptoms in dopamine, in schizophrenics. So, what is the most important component in dopamine is? Do you even understand? Excuse me. What is the most important component in dopamine is? There are two receptors, DA1 and DA2. Simple. Just get there. DA1, DA2. D1, D2, sorry. D1, D2 receptor. Only get to here. Don't take anything else beyond this. There are more receptors, but I'm concentrating on D1, D2. Remember this. What these two do to your brain as a schizophrenic, we're going to understand that as well in this video. So, let us try and understand on deeper level, how does D2 receptors makes it difficult for you to stay inside your brain as a schizophrenic? Did you ever imagine that how does it that the birth of schizophrenic takes from inside? Just imagine. I'm not saying that you don't have schizophrenia. I'm saying how the birth of schizophrenic takes from inside the brain. From here on, you'll have an eye-opening from here. Absolutely crack it on. I want to give you all the information from here on, and as much as I can give you to provide you, to give you and make you believe that what schizophrenic is from inside, not outside. Forget about that. Forget about what the medication does for now on. Think about how the birth takes place from inside. So as you can see, if you see the picture, there is this mind and there is this reality, and between is the part of the inner world. What are we looking at? Why is this picture like that? If you see that picture, the mind and the reality, how does the mind is separated from the reality? That picture is talking about. If you see the mind develops something is called as inner world. Now, schizophrenic, the most important component of schizophrenic is the inner world. When there is this inner world built inside the head, you get away from the reality. If you see in that picture, the distance is bigger, and the distance get further and further as they reach to the stage of psychosis, and the reality is it doesn't exist anymore. Reality means sync with the present moment, and that reality is gone, far off. The inner world is controlling the brain, and when the world is controlling the brain, then you are absolutely in a state of psychosis. This is that picture, the evidence that's telling you that the birth of inner world begins inside of you. That inner world is built with a lot of, boundaries, a lot of restrictions, and only you have the access to that world, which means who is responsible to build this world? Something is called as RSIO. I'm going to talk on this video, what this RSIO does. What is this? This is neuroscience, and when we research or when we study certain diseases like schizophrenic, Alzheimer's or something, then we have to dive deep, and this is what the newness have come up is RSIO is responsible for the inner world. And I'm going to talk on that as well, on a deeper level, what exactly this is all about. So, apart from the first section that I talked on, that the mind and the reality, it just goes away. What I'm talking is this. Imagine this is a reality and this is the mind. So as the psychosis increases, the reality goes away. You see, and the mind, you're in your mind. But this is gone. Nothing to do with you anymore. It's gone. So the first section is to understand that you get away from the reality. The inner world is that first section that's controlling your brain. So if the inner world is controlling your brain, if the inner world is controlling the brain, then what is going to happen to your brain after that? Did you ever imagine? So this is what happens. Specific regions of gray matter and white matter changes are observed in patients with schizophrenia. Gray matter changes being more significant after the onset of psychosis. These pathological changes may be implicated in the impairment of executive functioning, attention, and memory working. In many stages that I've seen, especially in patients, you must imagine how they do it. Like when they're talking, I'm trying to mimic a schizophrenia. Please, I'm sorry, I have to do this, but I'm doing this to make you understand what I want to make you realize. Imagine they're talking. Imagine that I'm a schizophrenic. Imagine, so I'm talking. So let's say I'm talking about something. I don't know what is happening, but I just I'm not I'm not feeling good, but I had coffee. But then they did something, but I'm not feeling so well. Something is calling me from inside. I'm sorry I did this, but please apologize. I did this thing is because to make you realize that the inner world is controlling the brain. What did I do right now is the gray matter and white matter changes is happening inside, which means this section is gone. This section is finished in psychosis. What is happening is this section has nothing to do with the reality. What it's doing to your brain is that it's keeping you intact with the inner world. And that is why there is this sort of numbness on this section. It's like, it's gone, it's finished. There's this disorganized speech. And there's this large amount of emotions are flowing as well. So they might just go crazy. And they might talk something. And then they'll talk something else. The inner world is changing. Why it is changing? Gray matter reduction. This is very, very important. If the psychosis increases, the gray matter will reduce and finish. Gone. You cannot repair it. I'm telling you straight. If they're living in psychosis if they're living in schizophrenia for about more than 30, 35, 40 years, or let's say 50 years, it's very difficult to treat because condition worsens with time. Why it worsens, I'll give you more examples and understanding on this. So, if you see what I talked about, then this is also important. Positive symptoms are hallucinations, delusions, disorganized speech, and abnormal movements. Negative symptoms are flattened affect, social withdrawal, apathy, and lack of emotions. Two kinds, positive and negative emotions. And they also change. Positive and negative symptoms also change due to medications. This is the reality. If you think that it's happening to you and you're doing this, then you're wrong. I'm going to be straight today. If you think you're doing this and you're blaming yourself, then you're wrong. Because this video is going to give you more insights on why you shouldn't be sorry for what you've done. And what you need to do is that you need to do that with the help of others. Don't concentrate on what you've done because it's not your fault. Please try to understand. You're not doing this. And I will keep saying this. Don't apologize because it's not your fault. It's happening because something is happening inside. And that's why you are seriously in bigger problem. So let us try and understand what you need to learn more on this. So as you can see, a combination of susceptibility genes 21 and other factor contribute to schizophrenia, and the net result dysregulates the dopamine transmission system, leading to high release of dopamine, more D2 receptors, and an apparent predominance of monomer forms of D2. This dopamine dysregulation leads to psychotic episode. Monomer forms. I want to make you explain what this is all about. This is interesting, and you should understand that you're not doing this. This is the reality of schizophrenic. You shouldn't apologize that you're doing this. You're helpless. You're helpless because this system is killing you. You're helpless. And I'm going to explain to you what is happening inside. Let's say I have these two, all right? Monomer forms. What is monomer forms? One cell, all right? One cell, which is quite equivalent, it's similar to the other cell. If this cell is similar to this cell, then they'll attach. And then they attach, then comes the third. Just give an example. So all three sizes are almost similar, all right? I'm just giving an example. So 1, 2, and then 3. Look how big they get. This is how big. It just keeps forming. And when they form, then what happens? It gets larger, it gets bigger. So the release is a lot of D2. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, I have this here. All right. You see these small things, right? I hope you can see. They are all attached to each other. This is how they form. They get bigger and bigger inside the brain, and they start to release. And when they release a lot, they release in the eyes, they release in the frontal cortical, and then the release in striatum. When they release all of these D2, then what happens is hallucination and delusion begins. Who's responsible and how these things are happening? Why there is a release of D2 in the brain? Are you doing this? Who is doing this? Responsibility goes to RSIO. I'm going to talk on this in this video, what this is all about and why this RSIO is responsible to release so much of D2 in the brain. So when we get to this point, we need to understand there's this one thing that I want to talk on is Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, DSM-5. The diagnosis of schizophrenia requires presenting symptoms that cause a decline in both social and occupational functioning for at least 6 months. You know, if I were to talk on this, then I'm not going to criticize DSM. Please, I do apologize if I'm criticizing on certain things, but somewhere down the lane, DSM-5 is not completely true. You know, because, why am I saying this? Is because social and occupational functioning for at least 6 months. Why 6 months? Why 6 months? Do you understand what changes can happen inside the brain? If you see, when you go to a neurologist or a neurosurgeon, and if you go and say, I have a headache, and it's happening since 15 days, the neurologist or neurosurgeon will say, go and remove an MRI, and I want to see what's there inside. Why it's continuing for 15 days. If a symptom, please try to understand, if you see a symptom which is imagination, number 2, disassociation, number 3, disillusion, and number 4, which is extreme, hallucination, which doesn't appear at the early stages, but you will see that there's a lot of stress and torture in the brain. It's happening. They cannot even sleep. fMRI. Don't wait. Don't wait till 6 months, because then the brain will change. What is going to change? Specific regions of gray and white matter changes finish. Gray and white matter changes are going to happen. If you are going to wait, you're going to seriously damage your brain. Wait for 15 days if you see the doctor. You can wait for 15 days. I'm giving the benchmark. Wait for 15 days and see what happens in there. 15 days is a lot to see the changes in the patient. And if you're not going to understand this, then for 6 months, you're going to go for a wild goose ride. Please understand this. The doctors will keep giving medications, keep giving medications. They'll change medications. Something or the other is going to happen. And then they'll say, you know what? I think that this is a sign of schizophrenic. Now we can start the medication. What were you doing for so long? I'm sorry to say this, but this is what the reality is. You know, you're playing in the dark. If you see certain signs, wait for 15 days, go for the fMRI, and finish the job. Those changes are the evidence that you have schizophrenic. You can also see the D2 receptors changing their pathways, and they're releasing a lot of dopamine in the brain, and you will see higher activities in certain brain areas. That's the evidence that the D2 receptors are releasing a lot in the brain. Finish. That is the end of everything. You have done a lot to bring in that changes, and when that change is happening, then how do you recognize these traits? In the fMRI as well, these changes are seen in prefrontal cortex, medial and superior temporal lobes as reduced gray matter volume. I'm giving you the evidence. These are the signs you would see that the medial and superior temporal lobes, there'll be gray matter volume reduction. The size will reduce. And there'll be minor changes at the beginning, not too much. But as you treat yourself, and if you don't try to control it, then there'll be a massive reduction in the brain, limiting your cognitive function, limiting the way you see things, limiting the way you understand it, limiting the way you look all around your environment. It'll restrict you because reduction has started. Who's responsible then? You see, we all need to play an important role in when we collaborate, or when we, the mental care department also need a collaboration with the neuroscience in terms of seeking help. You cannot just say that, I'm a doctor and why should I go to the neuroscience department to talk on this? I'm a doctor and I shouldn't go there. I'm just saying this. This is where the biggest problem is, this ego of that I am this and I am that. This is where the patients are suffering. But if this is happening inside, and I don't want to get to the part of, argumental with the mental care department and the psychiatric department, why they should approach the neuroscience in terms of these problems so they can find early symptoms and they can cure them as soon as possible. But they're not going to do that. They got a high in ego, and I'm not going to talk on those terms as well. So if we get to this point, then there's another factor. Dopamine plays a major role in psychosis. Yes. So a while ago when I mimicked a schizophrenic, you must have seen that I was here, but I was lost in the head. I was here, but I was lost in the head because of dopamine release. Dopamine causes hallucination and disillusion as well. Excessive release blocks this section, frontal section, block, finish. The working memory, how this working memory works. I'll give you two examples. Imagine there are two gates. One gate has a pass. The car comes, they check, and then they let them go. And then the car passes. Then it goes down, they check, it opens, the car goes. And then there's another way to look at it is that there's this gate, the gate is open, and the car goes through that gate. Nobody stops. What happens when you release excessive dopamine? The checking is gone. Only the gate is open. So it goes through without validation right here. No validation. It goes straight in and it connects with the inner world. This is the sad part. Because dopamine blocks, which means there's no function in this section. But it goes inside directly without any validation, without any understanding that I need to treat myself. That I'm getting into psychosis, I need to stop it. very few patients who realize this, that there's something different going on in my brain and I need to approach my family and talk to them and treat myself is rare. Not everybody does that. And that's why the problem increases. And another thing that happens is there is an extensive central nervous system involved in pathology of schizophrenia. These include frontal lobe changes responsible for memory and executive processes, and temporal lobe changes responsible for language comprehension, auditory perception, and episodic memory. Frontal lobe changes, like I said, it's blocked, which means this is not working at all. So dopamine is shutting this section down. Finish. Boom. So who's controlling it? Dopamine, releasing a lot. Changes in the temporal. What is temporal lobe? It more towards hearing and sound processing. It goes inside process those sound. So when there's a reduction in those sections, which means there is something inside the head. The voice, it's clear, it's loud, and it's telling you, you're not going to listen to anything outside, but you're going to listen to that voice inside. This is that temporal lobe changes responsible. The part of language comprehension and auditory perceptions and episodic memory all change. Finish. Auditory perception. They hear something in the head. They're talking. Imagine they're talking, okay? And that voice has popped up. Block. Finish. Block. I'm talking the block. This time there is a block. The block is they're speaking, but they're feeling that story inside. The voice is getting louder and louder and louder, and that speech, it doesn't make any sense. They're lost in that speech. They're gone, they're inside. And that's where the problem begins. Some of them, in schizophrenics, you must have seen that the patient takes drugs as well, like meth, or they take weed, they take crystals. They do that because they feel that they want more. That voice is not shutting down. Some of them even talk, like, they say, if I take weed, the voice changes. The voice is not changing. The chemical that weed is changing that voice. The voice is not changing itself. Please try to understand. Crystal changing that voice. Meth changing that voice. Cocaine changing that voice. Now imagine you're taking cocaine and you have schizophrenic. What's going to happen to the brain? The brain will, it'll have a high stimulation. That voice will get powerful. That voice would keep telling you, do this or do that. Shoot this guy, kill this guy. Or, jump from this building. You can do it. Jump. You see what is happening? That chemical, according to that chemical, the voice changes. This is how crazy this is. You think the voice is changing because I'm taking these drugs, but the drug is actually changing that voice, that inner voice that you're hearing. And that voice is not controlling anything inside your brain. That chemical is actually changing that voice because that brain is soothing effect inside the brain. Like meth, giving that warmness in your heart. So when that meth gives you that warmness in your heart, like a hugging feeling, then that voice will get softer in your head. That voice will give you that soothing effect in your brain. Why? Because that chemical is controlling. This is what happens inside a schizophrenic. And then comes the part of the subcortical dopamine dysfunction remains to be the key factor in psychotic symptoms. A presynaptic dopamine dysfunction appears to mediate psychosis and schizophrenia. Yes, if you ask me what I'm talking now is the reality on schizophrenic. Psychosis, the dysfunction of dopamine, is the key factor. Key factor. There is nothing beyond this. Any type of schizophrenic, remember, reward circuitry. Reward circuitry. What exactly reward circuitry is? Let's say I have this pen. A normal human being will think about this pen. Okay, I have this pen. I love this pen, the way it writes and the way it does. I like this. So I want to buy this pen. You like it, you'll buy it. Finish. Satisfaction happen inside your brain. You go home, you start writing, and you're satisfied. Finish. In schizophrenic, it's different. Reward means feeding the inner world. What happens is that when they're looking outside, psychotic symptoms, release of excessive dopamine, hallucination and delusion, feeding the inner world. Finish. That is the reward. And then there is this block. This is the reality. This is psychosis. Between the two, what divides it? RSIO, responsible for inner world and the present world. This RSIO is responsible for all of this. And so the patient cannot understand what to do next with it. Then comes the stimulants such as amphetamines, enhance dopamine effect and may induce psychotic symptoms in healthy individuals. When people with schizophrenia take stimulants, they are more sensitive to psychotic effects due to increased subcortical synaptic dopamine content, dopamine synthesis, and abnormally high dopamine release following amphetamine administration. This is very, very important to understand. You see, large amounts of dopamine is causing a serious problem in schizophrenics. When you're given these amphetamines in healthy individuals, when you give them, they can get psychotic. How crazy this is. And when you give it to the part of schizophrenics, then is a part of that, schizophrenic, they start to behave in a certain manner. During understanding this part, amphetamines, one thing was sure on schizophrenic. When they were looking at a certain degree, let's say they're looking at this pen, and there's these D2 receptors. They look at it, but something else is happening inside the brain. This is dangerous. This is what I'm talking about, what these chemicals do to your brain. Fully finished, gone. It's like, someone has a key to your central nervous system, CNS, and they're like, just switching it on, they're turning it off, and you're gone. You're not in your control. They're looking at it, but something else is happening inside. This is happening outside, but something is happening inside. And that's what schizophrenia is. These amphetamines, they make it really difficult. And then comes the part of they can be legal or illegal amphetamines. They can be legal or illegal. Please try to understand. They're legal when they are prescribed by a doctor and used to treat health problems such as obesity, narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is what? Where they're sitting down. They've slept well at night, but they're sitting down and they're dozing off. And they cannot stay awake. The ability to stay awake is difficult. There are many things in narcolepsy. I'll come up with that video as well. But for now, it is something, the ability to stay awake is difficult. Just as that. You sleep most of the time. Whether you're in a class, you're cooking, you're driving. The moment you focus, gone, finish, you gone to sleep. It's very difficult in narcolepsy. Or attention deficit disorder, ADHD. Using amphetamines can lead to addictions. People who use these drugs, especially have a high chance of getting HIV and hepatitis B and C, or it can be through having unsafe sex during drugs. You can lead to risky behaviors. Now, when we talk on these drugs, amphetamines, I already said that it can destroy the brain as well, because these are stimulation. Unless a doctor doesn't prescribe you, you should not take any of these, because the addiction will increase. I want to feel good. I want to take this medication. And I'm not going to stop myself from here on. I'm going to continue to take this medication. I'm not feeling good. So what happens to the brain? The brain starts to feel uncomfortable without this drug. So each time there will be a withdrawal symptoms, you want to keep taking it. Dopamine withdrawal symptoms is craving. So you're going to keep craving for these medications, and you want to keep taking them. Then addiction happens when you use amphetamines to get high or improve performance. Addiction means your body and mind are dependent on the drug. You're not able to control your use of it, and you need it to get through daily life. And then, you know what happens? You want it. Imagine you like sweets, and somebody says, hey, you know what? Eat some sweets. And then you keep taking them, and in the end, what happens to your brain? Oh, you know what? I want to eat more sweets. And then you keep eating it, and you keep eating it. What happens? It leads to tolerance. I want it, I want it, I want it. I don't care. That's what addiction does to your brain. It will reduce the amount of understanding why you're taking this, and it's going to increase the part of addiction in the brain. And that's where it gets very, very nasty to the brain. You cannot have control over amphetamines. And if you try to stop it, there'll be more of reaction to the brain. And that is very dangerous. That's very dangerous. Because it not only increase the part of that chemical in the brain, and when you stop it, strong delusion and hallucination will increase. Strong. Psychosis will increase. Just like the patient will say, you know what, I believe that I can see things, I can feel things, and I know what is happening inside. And, you know, I cannot control this anymore. And then they get lost in that world. They're talking, they're just talking. And they're lost. Imagine how hard it is to stay in control. Imagine that. This is not normal. Someone is, controlling the brain. So, when we reach to this point, let us try and understand more on these terms. What do I need to make you understand from more on is to give you more clarity on all of this. Since we've reached to this point, we should also understand what schizophrenia does to the brain. isn't it? So there are, as you can see, there are many more pathways involved directly or indirectly within this circuit, such as the amygdala and hippocampus, which are responsible for perceptions and emotional regulation. Dysregulation of thalamus and cerebral cortex largely affect the striatum and D2 receptors, causing hallucination and disillusion symptoms. You see, I already talked on this. Circuits such as amygdala, hippocampus, which are responsible for perceptions and emotional regulation. How many of patients do have positive symptoms and negative symptoms in schizophrenia? This is that dysregulation of amygdala and hippocampus, and structural changes in the temporal lobe and the frontal lobes. All of this, they destroy the brain, and they just make it so difficult that the patient feels that I'm losing myself with time. The patient literally have bad emotions. They have lack of motivation. They don't do anything, just sit down and they're sad. And then they're given medications to treat themselves. But as we try to understand more on this, when it says that schizophrenia is a disorder known for neuroanatomical changes over time, like I said, there are various regions of the brain that have been implicated in patients with schizophrenia. In particular, the gray matter of the brain is consistently affected in schizophrenia. The widespread use of MRI have shown evidence of reduced gray matter volumes within the frontal, medial, and superior temporal lobes. This can explain the episodic memory decline and fluctuations in decision making as the disease progresses. Very sad. Very, very sad. I feel sorry for this. You know what you're missing out? Decline in episodic memory. This is no good. As a human being, if you have good memories, you want to store them, isn't it? Because someday you'll sit down in a chair and you'll look outside and you look at your front yard, or you're looking at the sky. Somewhere you're looking at the road, but you're remembering something good. Don't you like that? Yes, you love that. It declines with time in schizophrenics. It's really sad, please. It's really sad. And then there's a decline in fluctuation decision making. Finish. The number of psychosis hitting you and the number of decline in your decision making as well. Very difficult. Very difficult to make decision. Imagine, let's say, you get up in the morning. Example. You brush your teeth. Everything is going good. You go to the kitchen, and the moment you prepare coffee, you light a fire on the gas stove. You light the fire, and you put the component. A basic one, if you're using a machine, coffee machine, then you press that button, beep, and it starts. But if you're doing it on a gas stove, then you light the gas, and the fire, you light the fire. As you start to prepare that coffee, boom, the voice starts. Should I put 1 teaspoon of coffee, or should I put 2 teaspoons of coffee? The voice inside stopping to make a decision. Oh, don't do this. This coffee has poison. Now, if you take this poison, it's going to kill you. Don't take this. Oh, don't put sugar, because you won't recognize that there is this poison in this coffee. Don't do this. Wrecked. Frontal and the inner voice. Frontal, the inner voice. Collide. Finish. and there's this deep emotions falling inside, and it's just falling apart from inside. Very bad mood, not controlling anything. Decision making is wrecked. Wrecked means wrecked. You cannot make any decision anymore. Finish. And so, as with time, the inner section increases, volume reduces from this section, and decision making is weak. Finish. Gone. Then what happens is, while the presynaptic release of dopamine is normal in stable patients with schizophrenia, brain imaging studies find that D2 receptors are released by an average of 5.8% in antipsychotic-free schizophrenia patients. Just look at that amount, 5.8%. Is this normal? And it's really sad to see that how these things are seriously damaging the brain. Now, when I talked on these receptors, monomer, where they connect with each other and they become large forms like this, they get bigger and bigger. Like this cell connects to this because they are almost, the identical structures, and then this connects with this, so like it gets bigger, like I talked on this. This is a form, we call it a polymer. Polymer is something that just keeps growing. They get bigger and bigger. And when they get bigger, then it forms a structure, like, it floods the brain with that chemical, and it's very difficult to control it. It's very sad to see the destructive matter on the schizophrenic brain. It's very difficult. Then what happens is, let us try and understand. So if those cells of D2 are increasing in the brain, then the medications are trying to stop them from growing, from increasing, to stop the inner voice and stop the inner world from growing. But why are they failing? Why? Why is it that we cannot understand that why are these things failing from inside the brain? Why can't we find that? Why can we stop thinking about all of this? So, as you can see, that the volume loss in the superior temporal lobe, medial temporal lobe, and thalamus. Look at that picture, completely devastated from inside. There is this burning desire from inside that inner world wants to come out, wants to explore the world, wants to explore the world outside. The inner world wants to contact the reality. The thalamus is like, how does thalamus communicate? Have you ever noticed? No, I'll tell you. Let's say there are 100 people living in a certain area. Let's say there is this small area where there are 100 people living in there. And 100 out of 100 people have mobile phones. So that would be one tower. One tower connecting the 100 phones. One tower. Imagine. That one tower is thalamus, communicating with all the different regions of the brain. If there is volume-less reduction in thalamus, are you going to have communication with the brain regions? No. Weaker synapses are going to happen. How? If the tower signaling is weak, can you communicate with the other phones? They will be like, oh, you know what, I cannot hear you. Come into a certain range so I can talk to you. That range is gone from inside. Thalamus imagine this is thalamus and this is prefrontal cortex. So the volume is reduced, so they cannot communicate with each other. Finish. It gets lesser and lesser and finish. You cannot do any more of this. And that's what happened to the brain. Psychosis increases, communication wrecked. I cannot understand what is happening outside. So they keep repeating it. And then comes treatment with deserine, glycerine, and sarcosine, which modulates NMDA receptors, can be beneficial, especially for negative symptoms. Yes, of course, deserine, glycerine, and sarcosine, they give a really good for the negative symptoms. They reduce the signs of the negative symptoms. These receptors, NMDA receptors, they're really beneficial for the brain, especially when you're feeling like lack of motivation, can't do this, can't do that. So these treatment with deserine, glycerine, and sarcosine, they give that positive, movement to the body. Yes, I can do this, I can do that. And that's what the part of these, these things can do to the brain. They can give you positive outcomes. And so when we get to this point, we'll further understand and analyze what exactly we need to do to understand the part of schizophrenics. So when we talk on deserine, glycine, and sarcosine, these are the amino acids that actually helps to activates a type of neurotransmitter, which is NMDA receptors. NMDA receptors is involved in formation of new synapses, which are important of learning and memory, which means if you see, we want the patient not to be stuck. We want them to move forward. Now, deserine, glycerine, and sarcosine, you can see upfrontly on, you can look up on, Amazon or some other places where you can find supplements for deserine, glycerine, and sarcosine. You can take them, but you need to ask for a doctor whether you can take these amino acids. And if you can, then it's beneficial for your brain, which means it can somewhat help you to learn and memorize new things. And that's what I like about these three amino acids. Although at the beginning, when I talked on these terms, I wanted to make it clear why I talked on deserine, glycerine, and sarcosine, and I forgot to mention it. So these can be taken. You can talk about the part of supplements. You can also look up on Google for the terms of these amino acids in what food it is involved in. In what food you can find these three amino acids, so you can introduce them to your family member who has problems with learning and memorizing as well. Schizophrenic patients should involve these amino acids. This is very, very important. And then comes the executive function impairments has been related to structural abnormalities in the striatum, thalamus, cerebellum, anterior cingulate, hippocampus, medial temporal, medial frontal, and superior posterior parietal cortex. Impairments, I'm talking about these regions. Look at the amount of regions are impairments. reward is completely disrupted. Thalamus signaling pathway, signaling also will be abnormal, like connection between, like hippocampus sends signal to thalamus. Thalamus is sending to prefrontal cortex, but nothing is happening. There is this abnormality of functions happening inside the brain. The connection is not giving full, signaling. Like imagine if the hippocampus is sending out to thalamus, then thalamus is sending out to prefrontal cortex. But right up here in prefrontal cortex, which is here, this section, nothing is happening. So it's not asking for more information back to hippocampus. The information is stalled. It's holding there and nothing is happening. It's an abnormal connection. It can't finish. And that's where the challenge begins. Cerebellum. Down there, finish. Anterior cingulate. Hippocampus, medial temporal lobe, medial frontal lobe, and posterior parietal lobe. Finish. All these major areas, abnormalities. Imagine how can you process things. How is it possible to stay normal? They're not doing anything to you. See, they're not connecting. This is the reality of the brain. And then you're expecting to be normal. This is the brain. It's gone. Abnormalities. This is not normal. How it's abnormal? I'll give an example. Imagine that you have to go from A to B destination. You know the road. You know the routes. I'm going to go from here to B by this route. And then something happens. This route is stopped. It's not working anymore. They've stopped. Go from other routes. How disturbing that is to your brain. You'll just freak out because you're going to get mad. Why are you going to get mad? Because what the hell is happening? Now I got to take another route. I need to go from that route. It is so disturbing. And then it's going to take more time for me to reach there. What is happening? Imagine that connection that was communicating well with the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex. Now it's not. How disturbing that is. I did an act on psychosis right now in this video, and I talked about it. That is what's happening inside the brain. Psychosis, finish. You don't know what you're doing because one section is highly communicating and the other one is doing nothing. Finish. No validation. How the patient are supposed to stay normal. It's very difficult. This is what happens in schizophrenics. And that's what I want to make you realize, that these things are not normal. When it comes to the meta-analysis demonstrates that schizophrenic patients start having brain volume abnormalities in the early teen with the first episode, which continues to a larger extent after the onset of the disease. Not so good. Not so good. I still am not happy with this. I'm not happy with this. Not so good. If they continue to happen in this condition, then how are they supposed to stay normal? How are they supposed to stay normal? Please try to understand what I'm make you realize here. That this is that part, that circuitry in the early teens. Imagine early teens means your brain is at developing stages, and this is a hindrance to the brain. Finish. Your life is finished. I'm thinking in terms of neuroscience and I feel sad. This is not normal. You have finished your life. That's the end of it. It's very difficult to stay with it for the rest of your life. Relationship you need a right person to be in a relationship that who understands schizophrenic. Your part of having friends will reduce. The part of growing and learning and memorizing will reduce. Hallucination will increase, delusion increase, the brain development stalls. Like it stops right there. It's not going to grow anymore. And finish. It's very difficult. It hurts to see all of this, but you cannot do much on these terms. So now that we've come to this point, let me make you understand on one small section that I want to talk on is the medication part. Everybody wants to know that, right? Medication is also important in schizophrenic, but still, I still believe they're lacking. I still believe. Although this medication gives you that effect, it gives you, right? It makes you feel good. But it doesn't do anything much. And that's the sad part. So as you can see, the first generation are typical, and then there is the second generation or atypical. The second generation is the new medications involved in schizophrenics. And then there's this first generation, which was not so effective, because it also gave some side effects, after taking these medications. They were giving serious side effects to the brain. As they continue to take these medications, have caused serious problems to the brain. Now, generally these side effects are not so bad. Look at those names out there. I don't want to talk on those names and all of this, because you can stop by and look at those names later on these medications of first generation and the second generation. But overall, these medications are not so good. It's not so good. I feel sad because these medications do not do much on the brighter side. They cause more of side effects than giving you that balance from inside. Let's say if you drink tea or coffee, why do you drink it? Because you want to make you feel good. You want to feel energized, right? You want to boost yourself. So you drink, you feel good, and you do this thing. It's like a stimulation. So this is what it does to your brain. It's actually giving you these medications, but they're coming with tons of side effects. It's not normal. You may take it to feel good, but you also have to suffer, because they're not controlling anything. They're just making you feel good, and for some time, you may feel like, okay, I'm moving forward. Not everybody's benefited by medication. This is the reality of schizophrenic. Not everybody. I'm sorry to say. Not everybody. Why? Because these expressions of these medications have caused severe side effects, but also patients are living in schizophrenic with a little bit of cognition, like they manage to control their schizophrenic, but that is not a permanent solution. And that's the sad part of it. It's a lifetime medication. They got to keep taking them. And that's the sad part of when you're taking these medications. So if these medications are giving these kind of problems, then the patients with schizophrenic exhibit reality distortion, disorganization, and psychomotor poverty, which were strongly correlated with the occupational and social impairment seen with the illness. Occupational and social impairment is pretty much high on stake in schizophrenics, especially when it comes to the part of, social affairs. Like, I'm just going to go out there, meet people and talk to them. It doesn't happen that way. It's very sad because they are living in closed doors. They trust very few. They don't open up easily. I understand. It's my, I feel sorry for all of this. When I'm speaking on this, even I must have said sorry a lot in this video because I feel that pain for them. It's never easy, because I'm talking about the part of, look at the reality distortion, disorganization, finish, and psychomotor poverty. It's very sad to see all of these symptoms. And then what furthermore, if you understand this part, that there is this problem with the reality, yes there is, then there is this disorganization. They don't understand what to say and what to do with it. Very sad. If I say that, I'm doing something now, and then I'm saying something else, I'll say I'll do it now. And while talking, I'm doing something else inside my brain. Have some compassion for them. I'm requesting you because they need help. It's very bad. It's very bad. I feel that pain of how much they're suffering from inside. It's not outside, it's inside. The mechanism is killing them from inside. And that's where the pain begins in schizophrenics. The real pain. The pain of losing themselves in the reality. It's a pain. And so when we reach to this point, then what are the changes? The changes are the prefrontal cortex, like I talked, basal ganglia. I forgot to mention this. Basal ganglia and the hippocampus are major regions involved in the neuropsychology of positive and negative symptoms seen in schizophrenia. Basal ganglia, finish. This region, I'll give you an example of basal ganglia. Let's say you want to do something. You want to take an action, you want to do something. Have you not taken that action inside your brain before you take the action? Actual action outside, isn't it? You must have thought about, okay, I'm going to approach like this and I'm going to do this and that's how I'm going to make it happen. So the action is taken. This is what basal ganglia does. You're taking the action inside and then boom, you go and do it. When this basal ganglia is involved with hallucination and delusion, finish. Combination of lethal weapon. I'll give an example. Psychosis. You must have seen. You lose yourself. Sometimes, isn't it? You lose yourself. Why? Because you get uncontrollable. Basal ganglia has done everything inside. Rapid increase in D2 receptors. Basal ganglia perform the act and you go and do it, bam, finish. It has made it real that this is what the reality is. Look at the action, the motor function. Dysregulation, finish, abnormalities. You cannot do it. Excuse me, and that's how you lose control over your brain. Then comes the most important side effects of FAGAs, are extra pyramidal symptoms which are associated with antagonism of D2 receptors in the nigrostriatal pathway. Acute extrapyramidal symptoms include acute dystonia, akathisia, and Parkinsonism, which prolonged use can lead to tardive dyskinesia. Sorry. What are we trying to understand? What is this tardive dyskinesia? Tardive dyskinesia is a side effect, especially in schizophrenics, when they take medications that really makes it difficult for the patient to understand what is right and wrong. So what tardive dyskinesia does is that when you take these antipsychotic drugs, the side effect shows up with time. What does it do? It's about movement disorder, characterized by uncontrollable, abnormal, and repetitive movements of the face, torso, and our body parts. You know something? You know something? You repeat. You know what I mean, right? You repeat these things. Even the movement, you repeat the movements. It's a side effect by the antipsychotic drugs. And you don't realize that you're having these side effects. And it's really sad to see that how it starts to kill the brain. So when we get to this part, then we are going to get to the main section of schizophrenics. What is that main section? That main section is called the how does the schizophrenic start in the head? And from here on, it's all eye-opening. Please try to understand from this section onwards. So as you can see, the first thing that begins in schizophrenic, the first stage is stress. Then comes, after stress, is overburden. Then after overburden, too much of overburden results in disassociation, which means I'm a failure, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, and I need to get rid of this world. It's not for me, I'm not liking this, I need to stay away from people, and all of those thoughts. Then comes building the inner world. When you're disassociated, when you're with yourself, you start to build things in your head. And that's where you start to validate the inner world by your... Excuse me. By looking around your inner world. By looking around the world around you. So you validate your world around you to increase the power of your inner world, which means I am right from inside. The schizophrenic starts to believe that I am right from inside. Then what happens is, after that world is building, they start to hear voices in the head. Once they start to hear that clear voices, then comes restlessness. These voices are guiding them to a different places, different reality, which means that world is real and the world they're living is not real, it's false. And then comes the part of the last thing that happens in schizophrenic is escapism. Escapism after restlessness means that I have supernatural powers. I can talk to the part of the spirits. I can connect with God, or I can connect with I can fly. I have superpowers. I can talk to animals. I can talk to birds. I can talk to, something like a supernatural stuff that they start to believe. It goes one step ahead of the real world. That is escapism. The brain has built the world. Now it wants to escape that world. Please try to understand. That world to another world, which is built on imagination, and something inside the head is causing an hindrance to the real world. And that is what happens to the brain. The last stage is escapism in schizophrenics. Now that we've come to this point and we've learned that the last stage is escapism, then what to talk on, the reality that I want to show you is we've come to the point of reversed sensory information input and output, RSIO. Reversed sensory information and output. This is the major factor. Please open your eyes from here. Is causing an hindrance for not fully treating yourself from schizophrenics. It's never going to treat you. You're going to stay in this for the rest of your life. This is what it does to you. It's destroying your brain. Reversed sensory information, input and output. The input information and the output information. What does it do? Let us try and understand on deeper level. From here on, your life is going to change. So, as you can see, RSIO is responsible for building the inner world. This information constantly take information from the environment, validated then by the inner world, resulting in the excessive release of D2 receptors. The eyes and sounds play an important role in RSIO, hence the outcome is confusion in being with the present moment. RSIO, reverse sensory information input and output. When I was trying to study the schizophrenic, this was quite prominent that it came out of it. What does it do from here on? I want to make you more understanding on this. You see, this is what schizophrenic needs to understand. What is exactly this is all about? Like I said, they're taking information from outside. They're collecting it. Let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say they look at a knife. Imagine this is a knife. They're looking outside. They're looking at the knife. The information goes in, right? The voice pops up in the head. Pick up that knife. And I want you to stab that person who's sitting on that chair. He's no good. He's going to harm you. You've got a great chance. Take that knife and stab him. Finish. Don't wait. Kill him. I'm telling you, he's going to come. He's going to attack you. You need to kill him. Psychosis. SSR. SRIOO. RSIO. The control is here. You're looking, but the control is here. How? I'll give you more further information on this. As you can see, changes are seen in the prefrontal, medial, and superior temporal lobes as reduced gray matter volumes. Of course, I talked about that. In the picture, if you see, there is this input from the eyes, and it goes back right inside the inner world. What is happening is, it's not going with the straight line. Imagine in a healthy human being, if they see something, then that product is processed inside, and then you recognize it, what this product is, and what am I supposed to do with it. Imagine you're buying a pen. So when you look at it, you say, okay, this is the type of pen I want. I can see it, I've tested it, I love it, I'm going to buy it. So that's a direct process. But in here, it's an indirect process. What is happening is they look at it, but it's going reversed. It goes directly to the part of the inner world. The inner world processes that information. And when you speak, the speech, the output, is controlled by the inner world, not by you. This is the reality of RSIO, reversed sensory information input and output. It's actually causing an hindrance outside. The information goes inside and is validated by the inner world, not by the brain, by the inner world, which is constantly functioning inside the brain. The voices, they are telling you what to say and what to do. You're not doing it. So what happens then? The activity increases in the brain. How does the activity increases in the brain? I'll give an example why there is this reduction of gray matter happening from here on. Imagine there is this 4 walls. You take a crazy ball and you, with a full strength, you force and boom, you throw it on that wall. It's going to hit this wall, and then it's going to bounce back and hit this wall. Then it's going to hit this wall, and it's going to go back and hit this wall, because they've hit with a strong force. Imagine that this is the length of that wall, distance between the two. If you reduce the distance of the 2 walls, the activity of that ball will increase, right? It's going to go back and forth even more, isn't it? And the more you reduce it, and the more it's going to hit back and forth, and it's going to keep rotating back and forth, the activity of that ball will increase, isn't it? With a crazy ball. The crazy ball that when you hit it, it bounces really high, highs and lows. So that ball, if you hit it and you get closer, the activity increases. This is what happens in the brain. We have senses, the eyes, the nose, the speech, the taste, and the sound. So what these do, they take it in and they process things. And that's how it comes out. In schizophrenics, due to extreme psychosis, these senses are blocked. So especially the eyes and the ears, they reduce volume, reduce of the gray matter. And this frontal cortex, reduce of the gray matter. So what does it do? The functions of these senses, they limit. They get limit. So when they're in limitation, the activity in the brain increases. And that's where the birth of RSIO begins. So because there's limitation, they cannot see it properly or process what is outside. What they see, it goes back in, and that is constantly controlling the brain. They're looking at it, but something else is going on inside. The reversed mechanism is controlling the brain. The activity reduces of the functionality of the brain reduces, activity due to dopamine increases in the brain. And that's where they lose the connection with the reality. Imagine there are people sitting and eating food on the table, one with schizophrenic. 9 people are communicating and one has very difficult task to communicate with the other person. The reality and what is happening inside is 2 different things. It's blocked. That person cannot communicate well because the block is happening right here. The receptors, the eyes and the sound, reduce volumes. Finish. They cannot process it. It's very difficult. That feeling inside, oh, you know what? This person is talking about me. I cannot do it. This person is saying something. I need to guard myself. I need to protect myself. 9 people are talking about me. Oh no, this is not right. That voice is inside is telling them. That voice is controlling. Because the functionality has reduced. That voice is controlling. If there's any restrictions in the brain, the functionality will reduce with time. So the gray matter reduces as RSIO is responsible for all of this. They will reduce the part of functionality in the brain. And this causes a lot of disturbance in the brain. And this is why the patient cannot understand what is right and wrong. And in the end, the brain is constantly in the control of the inner world. How is it controlled? I'll give you another example. There was this person who talked about that, I don't know know whether you've heard about this story or not, but this person said that I had an extreme psychosis, and I was living in Florida or California, somewhere like that, he talked about. And then this patient said that next to my neighbor, there was this party going on. And my mind said that there is this woman inside that, in my neighbor's home, and 10 people are raping that woman. So what does he do? This guy goes and burns the house. And then he realizes that, I shouldn't have done this. The guy who was taking the interview asked him, when you saw that there was no guy, raping the girl, then why did you burn the house? Why didn't you go and talk to the guys? Number one, my brain said that there was 10 guys raping the girl. RSIO, finish, limiting the part of vision. Even though he saw there was nobody, but he still saw that there was someone is raping. You see what I'm saying? The control is inside. The eyes have nothing to do with the reality. It is constantly feeding the inner world. It's building the inner world. Nothing happening outside. There are walls. There are things that you do at home. And that vision is picking up that information to process with the inner world. And that's where the confusion begins. Because 90% the control is by the inside and 10% is outside. It's very difficult to stay normal when that control happens inside and the outside is nothing is happening. And that is why it's very difficult to treat schizophrenic patients. Because the inside, it's all the crazy things happening. It's uncontrollable. Imagine that man burning the house. For what? Luckily, no one got, burnt out. Everybody was safe. But he had to got treated by the doctors. And then he was taken on medications and cutting down the D2 receptors, obviously taking those medications. And somewhat they helped, but the guy went back to drugs again. And he went untreated after that as well. But I don't know much about the current story of his, that how worse his symptoms are getting, because I'm not getting much information on him. But another way that I really wanted to help him, somewhere that I could communicate and tell him, hey, you know what? Maybe I can help you with certain symptoms and I can guide you what you need to do at certain level. But he went out of control and I couldn't find him anywhere. But anyways, that sometimes you really have to take in the hard stuff. You have to gulp in there and you cannot do much on that. So that's where we have realized that, RSIO is responsible for creating serious problems in the brain. Now that we've understood that reversed sensory information, input and output causing serious problems in schizophrenics, the control of the inner world is more than the outside, then what is seriously happening inside that needs to be controlled, isn't it? Now that we understood who is that cult, then we also need to control it. Now, the major component of understanding schizophrenic is what? What is that major component? The activities you do every day. Keep a watch. Why do I say keep a watch? Because someone needs to motivate you to do something better than what you're doing. And that's where the opening of prefrontal cortex begins. Number one component is to motivate you to do something beyond what you're doing. And that requires number of people associated with that patient. And imagine it works wonders. It works wonders. Encourage them to do something better with learning and memory. That is where the game changes. The more you give them motivation to do more, the voice in the head will start to be controlled. And you will see in couple of years, that voice is seriously in control. Because you're increasing the part of synapses with new ways of learning and memorizing. And you can start with small. It's not a big thing. And when you start small, you'll start to open up your prefrontal cortex. Anyways, that we've come here. Now let us try and understand with the end stages that what are we supposed to understand in terms of diet, and what are we supposed to understand in terms of what are we supposed to do with living in schizophrenics. So let us begin with diet first. Now there are many things about diet people talk about, but my main focus is on two things in the diet. I'll explain you what it is. So as you can see, vitamin B12 and vitamin C, they're the most important components in schizophrenics. Talk to your doctor if you can take this. Why? Because we want to increase the part of memory and learning, and also part of detoxification. We want to detoxify your body, because you take a lot of antipsychotic drugs as well that can cause serious problems in the brain and the wiring. So please stop. Please talk about the part of detoxifying your body, and that can done by vitamin C. Vitamin C has good amount of especially the part of antioxidants, and it's really good. Antioxidants is something that can make you feel good. Like, your brain will feel lighter, you'll feel good about yourself. The first step to schizophrenic is to have the part of antioxidants. It's very, very important, because antipsychotic drugs causes a lot of problems, especially with the part of the blood and increasing the blood sugar also. So we need something like antioxidants. Then the second thing is, please talk to your doctor about omega fish oil. 3 things involved. One is in ADHD, one is in bipolar disorder, and one is in schizophrenics. Omega-3 fish oil works pretty well, and you should talk to your doctor if you can take this. But there is also one thing I need to make you understand is, you shouldn't take high dose of omega-3 oils if you are also taking blood thinning medications. Blood thinning medications depends on the doctors. They give prescribed you certain medications for your heart, for your blood pressure, or whatever. So talk to your doctor. You can take low doses of these. Why do you need to take this? It helps you to increase brain fat, which helps you to increase a part of your learning and memory as well. Omega-3 fish oil is very good for the brain. It reduces the symptoms as well. So it's a natural way to treat schizophrenics. Then comes increased tryptophan. Tryptophan. 1 cup cooked lentils delivers 50% of body's daily requirement of tryptophan. What is tryptophan? Tryptophan is to help make melatonin and serotonin. We want these 2 things. Don't we want to reduce the activity in the brain? Yes, we want. We want to increase the natural level of serotonin. Lentils, you can make lentils like dal, like lentil soups. You make these lentil soups liquid, and then you drink them. That's also really soothing. And then you can have lentils in your diet, which also have protein in them. So this tryptophan also increases melatonin, which means circadian cycle, sleep cycle. The better the sleep is, and the better they recognize the awareness in their body, that what is happening in them. So you need to quieter the brain. And the more you quiet the brain, the better it is for the brain to understand what is right and wrong. So tryptophan is very important in schizophrenia. I would highly recommend increase it in your diet. You can search on internet what are the types of food involved with tryptophan, and you can be on a tryptophan diet for certain weeks and see how it behaves in your brain. You're going to feel good. Then comes the part of eating berries. Berries are really good in antioxidant, and you should definitely involve in your diet. And then my favorite, probiotics. Due to antipsychotic drugs, you feel very bad. Your gut is upset stomach. Sometimes you don't feel good. Bloating, indigestion. You don't feel good. So probiotic also increases the part of understanding in your brain, which means your brain understands well. The gut is healthier, then your brain will also work pretty well. If your gut is disturbed, you cannot understand well. So the diet plays an important. Probiotics means you can have fresh curd. Fresh curd in the market you get, or you could say yogurt. But depending that yogurt is not over sweetening or has a lot of sweetness in them, don't do that. There are also others that don't try to drink probiotic drinks. It's very bad. I wouldn't recommend any of those. Natural probiotic food. Curd is really good. I like that. And that's pretty good for the stomach as well. You can also have buttermilk. Wow, I love that. You can involve buttermilk during the daytime. Drink. You can add, nice flavor of, what do you call that? I don't remember it. But there's this powder, roasted powder. You put in that buttermilk, and then you add a little bit of salt, and you drink it. It tastes good. And add a lot of water. It really soothes your stomach. It's bad. It's good for the stomach, especially to keep your body calm. It's good. And if you give that, it's really good. Then what else do we need to do? We need to understand that during summers, please keep your body cool. And in winters, keep your body warm. If you're going to reverse it, that you're going to keep eating stuff that's going to be really high on spices, high on, deep fried food, they're very bad because they're going to give you more negative symptoms inside your brain. Since the brain has high activity, acidic body also produces negative symptoms in the brain. So schizophrenics will have a lot of problems to communicate with the brain, especially when the gut is unhealthy. So keep your gut healthy. That's the basic functions. You can also add, saffron. Saffron is good for the brain. I recommend use saffron in milk and drink it. It's very good for the brain. Especially in schizophrenics, it's good for the brain. Use saffron. It's a natural way. It has many benefits. Use saffron in milk and give them. Warm milk, cold milk in summers, warm milk in winters. Let them drink a little bit of saffron milk. These things are good for the brain. And these are natural elements. They come from, the time of, really, really old. They're good for the brain. Literally, having these medications, try to treat with yourself with the food. You're going to feel extremely good about yourself, because your food is controlling the brain as well. And that inner world will start to reduce as you improve in your diet. Then comes the important thing. What else can you do in the end? We've come to the last stage of understanding schizophrenics. Remember, this is the beginning. of schizophrenic as well. I'll come up in the future with many videos on schizophrenic as my research is continuing. Furthermore, understanding how can we make a better treatment for schizophrenics. But these things that I'm talking now, they can also be quite beneficial. So, as you can see, mindful activity, the first lesson in schizophrenic. Why? Because I talked about the RSIO, which is reverse sensory information input and output, is more responsible for higher activity in the brain. Then you should practice mindful activity. Mindful activity means it's an exercise. Just like when you go to the gym and every day you exercise, that's how you need to exercise the brain for mindful activity. Why? Because we want to open up the prefrontal cortex. Mindful activity is an exercise. It's not like you do it 1 or 2 days and you stop. No, every day you have to do this to open up your prefrontal cortex. This is an exercise. Please try to understand. Every day sit with your family members and they will help you with meditation. Sit with them with the meditation and you do meditation with them. The other person will guide you how to do meditation. Stay in the present moment. Try and stay mindful. It's an exercise. Think about an exercise. Every day when you do this, the volume inside the head will reduce. Then comes attention-seeking activities. This is very, very crucial. Attention-seeking activities means that you have to pull up all the attention in a certain activities. We need to open up the working memory. We need to have higher attention levels. Just like, when you're painting or when you're supposed to cooking something which is interesting, cooking for the first time, a new dish, mastering something, where a lot of attention is required. Like, you're drawing something or maybe you're writing something. Your attention is increasing. You're increasing the attention to that present moment. That activity should be done. Number 3, not to wander in the past. Why? Because responsibilities of RSIO is very sensitive. If you go to the past, then that voices will start to speak up really high. So avoid that part of that speech. Keep it low and keep it easy. Do not get involved in the past too much. Obviously, the episodic memory will reduce, but don't you remember the happy things? Your first thing is to understand is to remember how to stay in the present moment. We need to activate the prefrontal cortex and the working memory and nothing else in schizophrenic. It's the boss of the brain is prefrontal cortex. The boss. I'm literally saying this on this video. The boss of the brain is the prefrontal cortex. The day you activate that region, you have control over your schizophrenic. Finish. It's gone. You will become the best of you've ever imagined. You'll become the best version of you. Control is by activation of prefrontal cortex. I'm literally saying this on this video. Learning a new language. This is pretty cool. Hippocampus, thalamus, prefrontal cortex, they all involve in learning and memory. Remember I talked about NMDA receptors, synapses, new synapses, learning and memorizing, amino acids like D-serine, glycine and sarcosine. Improve this. When you learn new language, you will learn so many things. You start to open up your prefrontal cortex. Forget about learning new language. Learn something new. Learn something new. Let's say you're praying and you're learning something new in prayer, then learn. Don't stop yourself. It's the boss of the brain. I want to connect with my prefrontal cortex. I'm going to learn. And the day you start to decide you're learning, your life is going to change. The disturbances are going to happen in the brain. Don't be focused on it. Focus on your learning and just keep learning. That's your business. Mindful activities, attention-seeking activities, and learning new things. This is absolutely crack of dawn for schizophrenics. I say, how they cannot change then? How can they not change? If they're still living in there, that means the surrounding is connected with the inner world. Find that error. Find that error that is connecting you with the inner world. Take help from a family member. Find the error. What are they looking at? And the inner world is getting activity. Then get rid of that stuff. Finish. Don't remain in there. Take that out and replace it with something positive on that place. Whether it could be the wall, the color, the object, whatever that is. Get rid of it. Even get rid of that activity that's reminding you of that voice is coming up from inside. Don't do that. Forget about that activity. Replace it with mindful activity. You will definitely control schizophrenics. Then comes a night schedule. Take help of your family members. The eyes plays a major role. We don't want to increase D2 receptors, isn't it? So what do we want to increase? We want to increase melatonin. How to increase melatonin? By light, warm light that soothes the eyes. The second, receptors. Infuse essential oils like lavender. Let it just go inside and calm the brain. Third, only music. This is very important to understand. Don't listen to songs. Listen to music that calms the brain. No songs. Only calm music. Listen to it at night and stay calm. Relax. Relax the brain. And that's how you'll be able to control the night schedules. The more calmer you get during the night, your sleep will get better. Take some catching, like holding therapies as well. Sit with your schizophrenic and, wrap around the arm around them and hold them and just have sweet talks to them. Comfort them. Along with these three things, warm light, lavender essential oils, you're burning the oils, and then soft music. And just hold them and talk to them and control them. What is going to happen is receptors like the somatic sensory, they're going to feel them good. They're going to feel relaxed. Hold them and show them a little bit of kindness and compassion towards them. They're going to feel good about it. Then comes the part of compassion-based activities. It's very important for schizophrenics to have compassion-based activities, which means compassion, when they recognize that compassion is important, then what happens is whatever they're doing to their body, they'll stop doing that. Because compassion will increase awareness in them. Awareness means that, I'm causing harm to my body and to the other. I need to stop this. So they'll seek help. They'll seek help to control all of this. Compassion activities, there are several activities like, helping yourself, helping others, feeding the animals, like feeding the hungry. Something like, that brings out that compassion in you. Those activities, especially, you can also try compassion-based therapies as well that actually increase the part of compassion in you. That compassion will increase the awareness in your prefrontal cortex, and the schizophrenic symptoms will reduce with time. You're not going to do any more of this. Your body will stop. Eventually, you'll increase motivation from family, friends, your therapist, your doctors. All of them comes together. They need to motivate you to do something better. Yes, you can do this. Of course. You want to learn something new? Yes, I'm motivating you. Do more. I will help you to achieve that. We're going to support you. Do it. You can do it. Motivation to these people. And then the last thing is sunlight for 5 to 15 minutes. If the D2 receptors are too much involved, the sunlight should be taken less. But if they're remain in a balanced condition, psychosis are reduced, then give them at least 5 to 15 minutes of sunlight every day. That is beneficial for their brain, the brain development. If they continue to do this, you're going to find serious changes in their brain, and you will see that more positivity is going to come out. The symptoms of positive symptoms and negative symptoms will reduce with time, and schizophrenics are going to feel much, much better with time. Remember, if they're living in in schizophrenics for 30-40 years, then the activities I talk, they need external help, because the reduction of gray matter has limited their functionality in the brain. So you have to do that for them. They won't be able to do it on their own. And even if they do, they'll at some degree, they won't be able to do mindful activities like meditation. So the other person who's sitting there should guide them how to do that meditation. And that's how that little bit of extra help, they'll start to balance their brain. But they have to do this every day. That's the important thing. They cannot skip it. They cannot just do it 1 day or 2 days. They have to do it every day, because gray matter reduction means we want new synapses to happen, formation in the prefrontal cortex. So we need to exercise the prefrontal cortex. So how to exercise? By mindful activities, by attention-seeking activities, by learning new language, new things. So that's how you open up this section, and that thing will reduce from inside. Finish. So I'm going to end here. I've done my possible thing as much as I can in this video. My best wishes goes out to all of you who are suffering from schizophrenics. I'm sitting here and I'm still saying, if you have any questions, please email me regarding schizophrenics. I'll try and give you as much as answer you want on schizophrenic as well. Email me on preciousbrainlab@gmail.com. I will study your case, and I'll give you maximum information I can on your condition. And so, my last thing is requesting you all, please subscribe my channel. I'm requesting you, because I'm working really hard to make things happen for you. And I'll continue my work. I'm requesting you to please come and join this community, and I will do as much as I can to make it feel better, to give you the answers that you're not getting from anywhere. So, your mental health is important to your family. God bless you all, and may you have an abundant, sweet life. Sending you so very much love, light, and healing. God bless you all, and I'll see you in a new video. Until next time, please do take care of yourself. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you so much.